problem, but there are other issues that are extremely disturbing. We started to tell you about them yesterday. That is the China hacking and the blackmailing that could start with all the information that ostensibly the Chinese have stolen. So as we wait for the candidates tonight to hear what they have to say on everything from national security to the economy, the high-profile threats are also front and center for a lot of our viewers. As we said, from China to ISIS in the Middle East to North Korea. The most imminent danger, what is it, and how should the candidates react to this threat? Joining me now in a Fox Business exclusive was the very first Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and former governor of Pennsylvania, Republican Governor Tom Ridge. Welcome, sir, and thank you so much for joining us.
It was nice to join you on the eve of a pretty important primary debate, that's for sure.
That's for sure. And I know because of all that you've had and all that you've faced, having been the head of Homeland Security, you've got to be wondering what these candidates' plans are. They've been very light on substance, way bigger on sizzle, and quite frankly, I think the American public needs to hear a little more steak, don't you think?
Well, I agree with you. I think it's time for some of the silliness of the sound bites, the political rhetoric, the red meat they're throwing at individual audiences has to be translated into far more substantive discussions as to how you're going to deal with an expansionist Russia, more aggressive China. How about the nuclear efforts now with North Korea, now that they've reactivated their plutonium capability? How are we going to deal with a new Iran? We're going to give them $100 billion, help them deal with their energy industry. And I hope somebody talks a little bit about cybersecurity as well. So there are a lot of things that need to be addressed tonight. They have too many candidates and not enough time, but maybe we'll get a little glimpse of what they're thinking about these very important issues.
Well, Governor, of all those threats that you just articulated, what do you think is the worst? Is it the China, what we talked about, the Facebook of spies that it apparently has amassed? Is it the ISIS threat? They're dying to come onto our land and set off some type of terror threat. You know, there's that. There's North Korea just the other day saying, we'll bomb you anytime we want with nukes.
Well, I think we need a president who can multitask and who's prepared literally to say, look, we have a responsibility to our citizens in the United States of America, but also lead the free world, democracies everywhere, to deal with these issues. We don't have to go it alone. We can't go it alone, but we need someone who's calm, confident, has a strategy that can engage, particularly our allies in NATO and other parts of the world, to deal with these and confront these, whether it's ISIL. Remember, ISIS is just an offshoot of al-Qaeda. That has been an expansion. We've had a policy in the Middle East that's pretty much ignored the expansion. We took our troops out of Iraq. We drew a red line. We didn't enforce it. And as a result of those two things, you see a much more aggressive Russia. You see North Korea perhaps thinking in the back of their mind, my goodness, look at the deal they made with Iran, and they don't even have a nuclear capability. We're talking about rockets and nuclear weapons, so maybe we can extort another deal. Remember, this is the President Clinton deal who said we were going to freeze it and dismantle it. Somewhat troubling right now. Neither one of those worked out. And then ultimately, I think we got to talk about China, their modest military expansion and aggressive moves in their part of the world, but also the cyber capabilities that not only China, but Russia and now Iran are obviously going to be expanding.
Have you heard from any candidate enough that satisfies you about any one or multiple threats here? I'm just wondering, because last night Donald Trump speaks on the USS Iowa and says, I'm going to make our military so strong we won't even have to use it. And yet there was no, here's how I'm going to do that.
Well, you know, I think Donald Trump has done a marvelous job of marketing Donald Trump. What's his answer to veterans issues? I'm number one for veterans. What's his answer to the challenge with the military? I'm going to make us really strong. What's the answer to the problems down in immigration? I'm going to build a wall and the Mexicans can pay for it. I think it's time that the public and the journalists ask candidates very specifically. We need some strategy. We need some specifics. Frankly, I like Jeb Bush has laid out a strategy in terms of engaging the rest of the world, dealing with the military. He has a cybersecurity strategy. So again, as you take a look at the candidates, we need calm, thoughtful, resolute leadership. I don't want to hear any more sound bites, any more red meat, any more of these platitudes. It's about time they get down to specifics.
Governor, have you ever thought of running for president? Because I'm telling you, people are really hearing things that they want to hear, where you can get into specifics from people who know. Do you think it's a problem to reject somebody who's already been a politician, because right now you've got Ben Carson, a neurosurgeon, and Donald Trump, a businessman, and people are saying, well, it resonates because they haven't been in Washington. But, you know, there is something to be said for the experience of having to horse trade a little bit with both sides of the aisle.
Well, someone who spent most of their life, as I have, and privileged to serve, I might add, in government, both as a Congress, as governor, and then the executive branch as a cabinet secretary. I appreciate the nature of the process itself. We don't want to get bogged down in the details, but I do think that someone who's demonstrated executive leadership, who understands and has worked the process to achieve outcomes. That's why I start out being governor-centric. They have executive authority, executive responsibility, and by the way, they're held more politically accountable than anybody else in the space. So I like governors, and obviously I like governors who put forward strong messages around a particular strategy, and for that reason, I really like Jeb Bush.
Well, we also have two governors, former governors like you, coming up, Governor Patterson of New York and Governor Heidemann of Nebraska, to weigh in on what happens tonight, too. Thank you so much, Governor Ridge.
My great pleasure, Liz. Thank you.